G'day mates, it's Busta here, and before tonight's video begins, I would like to give Zero City a big shout out for sponsoring this video. Now, I don't know about you guys, but any game that features a zombie apocalypse sounds like a good time to me. In fact, I guess you could say that everyone's dying to play this game? No? Okay. Well, Zero City is an online simulator free-to-play game that features a refuge populated with survivors. Your goal is to create the mightiest squad, develop your base, and raise up new survivors to oppose other players and various infected mobs that inhabit nearby areas. Set in a post-apocalyptic environment, spiced with an atmosphere of danger and featuring high-quality HD graphics, this RPG game will leave no one unimpressed. The game presents players with an array of different in-game features, like the ability to upgrade your city dwellers with gear and useful items, different refuge upgrades that stop the infected from entering, a story-driven campaign, really interesting and creative weapons and equipment for your survivors, hundreds of battles with hordes of zombies and mutant fanatics, and the one I'm looking forward to the most, PvP. I'm really looking forward to some salt farming. I've actually just started playing though, and honestly, I'm really enjoying this game so far. I'm a bit of a sucker for a good artistic aesthetic in a game as well, and Zero City has not disappointed. So, download Zero City via my link below, enter your nickname, and get a special bonus for new players. 3,500 cash and 250 crypto coins. Three years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend in a one-bedroom apartment in a little mountain town. It was a half-basement unit, so the bottom of all of our windows were level with the ground outside. It was also an older apartment, and not all the windows could fully lock. So one day, my boyfriend comes home from work like he normally did while I'm just laying on the sofa, and immediately runs up to the window near me and looks out of it frantically. He then goes to look out of every other window in the house, then walks around the outside looking in the windows. Well, when he comes back from this confusing exploit, I ask him what the heck is going on and why he's being such a spaz. Well, I think I just walked up on a dude looking in the window at you and he took off as I walked up, he tells me. This was naturally very unsettling, but after discussing it and considering the time of day, it was about 2 p.m, and the number of people out and about around the complex at that time, we came to the conclusion that it must have just been a curious neighbor or someone passing by happening to glance in. And with that, we mostly forget about it. If only that was the end. So for the next couple of months, odd stuff happened here and there. Someone would knock on the door occasionally, and then when I went to answer, nobody was there. I would find things in my apartment that I wasn't familiar with, or things like clothing items would just vanish. I didn't really think twice about any of it. That is, until one night. So my boyfriend and I were arguing around 1 or 2 in the morning, and we were being pretty loud. We were standing in the kitchen face to face, his back to an open window with the blinds up halfway, and I was facing it. Amidst our arguing, I glanced behind him at the window, thinking that I saw the reflection of my face in it. But then I remembered that the window was open, and it definitely wasn't my face. There was a man with his face pressed almost against the window screen, watching us. Given the fact that we were arguing and it was late, I thought for a moment that it might have been a concerned neighbor walking up to the window to speak to us. Our main walkway for the complex was right on the other side of that window, so I spoke to him. Hello, can I help you? I asked a little aggressively, thinking a neighbor was intruding on our privacy. He responded to this by staring, unwavering and cold, right at me. His face didn't change expression. He didn't blink or move, just looked straight at me, a way that I've never been looked at before or since. In this instant, I also realized that because of the window being level with the ground, the only way this man's face could be where it was if he was laying on the ground outside the apartment, or crouched and contorted to look into the window. And at at that, my heart sank. I buried my face into my boyfriend's chest and I closed my eyes in fear. My boyfriend, up to this point, thought that I was messing with him. When I buried my face into his chest, only then did he say, "Is there really someone at that window?" I whispered yes to him. He felt my fear and took a moment before he turned around. By the time that he did, the man was gone. It was at this point, too, that I started to think about all of the little odd occurrences that I'd been experiencing, and I assumed the worst. I filed a police report with his description, and my brother loaded up my apartment with weapons to protect me, or at least inform this peeping Tom that I was armed. After that night, though, myself, my boyfriend, and my brother too were on high alert. There were a couple of times when my brother came over that he saw a sketchy dude hanging around, and even one time he saw him at my window. He tried to follow him discreetly, but the guy took off running as soon as my brother stepped in his direction. The last night, though, that I had an experience with this man, I was sitting home alone on my sofa. My boyfriend was at work, a restaurant about 2 blocks away. He had actually picked me up from work an hour earlier, and we had sat on the sofa together a little while when we got home. Then he kissed me and left for work, locking the door behind him. After he left, I continued to sit on the couch on Reddit for a while, just in silence. After about an hour of me sitting there in silence, I hear a door creak open. It's a small apartment, so to see the bedroom and the bathroom doors from the couch, all I had to do was lean a little to the left. I assume it was one of my cats coming out of my bedroom or something, so you can imagine my shock when I lean over and see the door that's opening is the door to the water heater closet, the small storage space. I look to my right, and I see both my cats sleeping soundly at the other end of the couch. I look back to the door, and it's still creaking open very slowly. And then it opens enough for me to see it. A set of fingers wrapped around that door, easing the door ever so gently to open it as quietly as possible. And that was going to be a big fat no from me. I ran barefooted out the door, into the snow, and down the street to my boyfriend's work. I immediately called the cops, and when everybody was back to check out the apartment, he was, of course, gone. But after that, my boyfriend and I packed our stuff up, and we went to stay with my parents. And 6 months later, we moved 1,000 miles away from that town. And that was pretty much the end of it. Now, I live 1,000 miles away from where all of this happened, so naturally a part of me thinks that there's just no way that this person could have found me. But last week, I heard a knock on the front door of my apartment. I was expecting a package, so I figured it was a delivery driver, and I didn't answer. I'd go and get the package later. But then they knocked again, and again. And the third one made me feel uneasy, so I waited a good 20 minutes to check the door. And when I did, there was no package, no note, no nothing. Which means that somebody was just knocking. And although it made me uneasy, I didn't initially think back to my stressful experience in my last town. I just thought that maybe somebody was trying to come and speak to me about something, and once they thought that I wasn't home, they must have left. But then, 2 days ago, I went out to get some groceries. I have a little patio, and I go out there in the mornings to just chill or check out the plants a lot, and I've been known to leave it unlocked in the day on accident. I never thought it was a huge deal, until I came home from the store 2 days ago, and the deadbolt to my apartment was now locked. The deadbolt that can only be locked from the inside of the apartment, period. I honestly assumed at first that somebody had robbed me because I dumbly left my patio unlocked. I called my sister, I called my current, new boyfriend. I waited for people to be with me, and I went into my apartment through the sliding glass patio door. But when I did, nothing was out of place. Nothing of value was taken, and at this point, my heart sank. Nothing was touched, nothing was stolen, but someone was inside my apartment just because they wanted to be inside of it. I told my boyfriend about my stalker, and he's not taking this all as lightly like my last boyfriend did. I filed a police report. We checked for recording devices and cameras, and he put Nest cameras up all over the place too, and we're now on very high alert. I really truly hope that this is all just a sick coincidence, but if this man really has followed me across multiple state lines, there's no one on this earth that I'm less interested in meeting. About 5 to 6 months ago, my partner and I were struggling to find an apartment with a landlord that would rent us. With the arrival of our daughter approaching quickly, we were becoming quite desperate in finding a place to move into. Eventually, we found a relatively inexpensive 2-bedroom apartment for rent, and the landlord happily rented it to us. About a week before we moved all of our belongings into the apartment and unpacked, my daughter had been born, and we began filling the walls with artwork and placing decor amongst the various countertops and shelves and whatnot, and my partner was very enthusiastic about arranging and decorating everything to make it feel like a home. Around a month into living in this apartment, I grew to feel a little uneasy around nightfall. Originally, I just sort of brushed it off as me being a new father, thinking it's simply me being protective over my new daughter and my partner. At about 3.5 months of living in the apartment, aside from the occasional uneasiness during the night, everything felt okay and safe. But one night, I had been laying on my couch at about 2 a.m. The way the unit is built as well allows me to see straight down the kitchen hallway to where the bathroom and the main bedroom doorways are when I was laying on the couch. And as I was laying there, I began to see a sort of swift, dark apparition go from the bedroom doorway to the cabinets in the hallway. It began to look as if something kept running back and forth from where my partner and child were sleeping to the unit beside us. Obviously, this sight made me feel a little bit concerned, so I went into the bedroom with my sleeping family and I went to bed. The next week, my partner and I were sitting on the couch together in the afternoon. My partner was breastfeeding our daughter, often looking down at the TV while I played video games or just glancing down at her phone and whatnot. She'd been positioned in the same way I was when I had seen the shadows a week prior, and was facing perpendicular to her towards the television. And she said, "Babe?" with a sort of surprised look on her face. "I just saw the tip of a white dress go into the bathroom." These words made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I began to feel fearful this time. She'd seen the frightened look on my face, and I turned to ask her if she was sure. "Yeah, don't be afraid though. If it was here to hurt us, I would probably feel scared too. Just a light smudge, I think," she told me. My partner and I are both First Nations, and because of this, the cultural teachings and beliefs we've both grown up with, we're both very aware of the existence of spirits or ghosts and how best to deal with them. My partner definitely has more paranormal or spiritual experiences than me, though. Smudging is simply the burning of sage, and we've used it every time that we've experienced any of these phenomena, as we believe it's a spiritual medicine that provides protection and cleansing against any negative energy or entities. But anyway, around our maybe 4th month of living in this apartment, my partner and I began experiencing objects being sort of moved outside of our view and hearing unexplainable sounds. The first time this happened was when we heard the scuffling of shoes and a sort of high heel being dropped around the corner by the front door. This happened late at night again, probably around midnight, and immediately I honestly thought someone had entered our apartment, so I opened my pocket knife and whipped around the corner quickly, but when I did, there was nothing there but the high heel in the middle of the doorway, which had originally been placed on the shoe rack, neatly with all the other ones. My partner and I smudged, and we went back to bed once again, as we weren't interested in experiencing any further events as such that evening. But we distinctly remember that we began to feel watched nightly after that, and felt a presence around us often. My partner and I reached out to family members asking what we should do, and they suggested feasting whichever entity is occupying our home. In our culture, feasting spirits is part of our responsibilities, and when they make their presence known like this, it usually means it's time to feast them again. I prepared some food, my partner and I prayed for it, we placed it in a sort of small wooden dish and then left it out in the apartment. But from the beginning of the 4th month to the middle of it, we began experiencing paranormal events almost daily. A week ago, my partner had heard our rocking chair in the living room knocking against the wall, and 2 days ago she heard the cardboard from my daughter's new crib rustling in a way that didn't sound like it could have done it by itself. Although we were both long overdue to feast, doing so didn't seem to alleviate the events that we've been experiencing in our apartment. And the feelings of uneasiness during nighttime grew into a sort of moderate anxiety for me as well. On a few occasions, my daughter, who was 4.5 months old, would suddenly wake up screaming bloody murder. Sometimes, too, we would leave her to play with a toy in her swing while we would do some dishes down the hall. And on a few occasions, she'd begin screaming like the few times she did when waking up. It's also within our beliefs, too, that because infants are new to this physical world, their perceptions are still closely intertwined with the spiritual world, so we grew concerned with the idea that she might be seeing this thing that is occupying our apartment. Last night at around 3 a.m. though, we'd all been sleeping in the bedrooms at the end of the hall, and in the next room over, my laptop began playing a YouTube video on full volume. It was loud enough too to wake us both up, and I knew that I'd been watching YouTube videos prior to closing the laptop and going to bed, but I've never recalled a time where my laptop, or any laptop for that matter, began playing any media while closed. I didn't even have the volume on full blast either, so it was really strange. And all of this is definitely the most paranormal activity that I've ever experienced in my entire life anywhere. And even for my partner too, I can sense that this is becoming tiring and frightening for her. I'll admit that on one hand we feel that because of the stresses and isolation of this pandemic, maybe our negative emotions and energies are attracting entities of ill intent. On the other hand, we feel that maybe other residents within the building are bringing these entities here too. Regardless though, any reasoning as to why this might be happening is just speculation, and we'll probably never know exactly why it's all going down. At this point, I'm really not sure what to do because, well, we can't really move and, well, we don't really understand why all this stuff is still here and what's really going on. But if any of you guys have any ideas about what we could do next, then I'm all ears. So this was back in 2015 when I was 16 years old. I'm a male as well, by the way. So this was in summer when both my parents went to visit some relatives out of town, and they wouldn't be home for like 3 days. I was the only child that was left in this house, and my grandma did visit me every single day to make me lunch and whatnot. I actually didn't ask her to do that because, well, I knew how to cook, but, I mean, who can stop old Nan, right? But of course, she didn't stay during the nights. And that was when I pretty much went wild, watching movies, gaming, watching YouTube just as much as I wanted. I mean, everything you could picture a 16-year-old doing when his parents aren't home. And on the second night, I was just watching a movie and I ran out of chips, paused the movie and went down into the kitchen to grab some more. And all of a sudden, I hear a window break and a door opening. The kitchen was separated from the living room where the door was opened. I quickly grabbed a knife and slowly peeked my head around, and there he was. A tall guy, around, I would say 2 meters tall at least, had a baseball cap, some old jacket, probably leather. It was torn on the right sleeve, but my phone was in the room upstairs. From the kitchen door, the stairs were directly to its right, so in my stupid mind, I was thinking that I could sneak past him and lock myself in. He was going through the shelf next to the door very loudly, I must say, and so I got to the stairs somehow, and he turned around at the last second and realized that I was there. Out of fear, I guess, I just sort of screamed and threw the knife at him, and I missed him, but the wall beside his head had the knife sticking in there. I guess he got scared too by me and my savage screaming and the throwing of the knife, and so he just ran before I could grab another knife. Yes, I ran back to get another one. Adrenaline is one heck of a thing, right? And when I saw that he left, I ran to my room and I called the cops. They came quickly and just took some fingerprints and any DNA samples that they could find. The next morning, I called my parents and they came back around noon. I don't know why, but I kept the knife lodged in the wall next to the door too, but the first question they asked is, why is there a knife in the wall? We eventually changed the front door with a really heavy-duty one this time, and they arrested the guy within the same week. And one of the cops told me that the guy was allegedly thinking that I was going to kill him and tried to call the police on an attempted murder or something. Go figure, right? So I guess the moral of the story is hide when someone is robbing your house, or at the very least, learn how to act like a maniac, like I did. A week or so ago, I went for my very first job interview. It was just a 10-minute bus ride away, and I happened to get a seat alone because it was like 10 a.m. in the morning, meaning rush hour was well over. So there I was, 18 and all dressed up for the occasion, and looking kind of like Amy from Brooklyn 99, I suppose. But that's how I dressed anyway. I was sitting there minding my own business, listening to music, when I made eye contact with him. Mid-30s, dark, tightly curled hair, somewhat of a small beard and creepo-style moustache, sloppy dress and a backpack. I didn't take notice until I was getting off and he got off too, saying hello to me. I said hi back, not making much notice, and thanked the bus driver. Straight away, this dude was on me. He began to ask my name and what my number was. I felt uneasy and creeped out, so I told him I wasn't allowed to tell random strangers that because my parents are protective. Total lie. They're actually pretty chill when it comes to things like this. And then he began his pity spiel about how he came from somewhere in India and had no friends or family in Ireland, and how he was just so lonely. Then he asked for my address, and I said no again, and he was saying that he'd meet my parents and they could get to like him. I instantly lied and said my interview was soon, when really it was actually about another 50 minutes away, but screw that. In the end, I made a good impression by being early anyway. I came out afterwards feeling really good, and this dude was still waiting outside for me. He began to stroll around with me and followed me into the pharmacy because I needed to buy something. He then began telling me about how he worked as a chef in the resort in the village and how he would bring me out for tea. I lied and I said I had no money, to which he said that he'd pay for me because the bus wouldn't be there for another hour and we could walk down when we saw the bus arrive. I declined and I said I wanted to have a walk around by myself because my friends living nearby would be meeting me. Again, another lie. And the reason for this is that you can't actually see the bus stop from the resort, and he seemed intimidated by the pack thing and after that just kind of scurried off. But here's why I lied. Firstly, he seemed way too upfront. Second, he was smiling and laughing when he told the pity story, meaning that he wasn't really sad about it. Third, I know a girl who's a pastry chef and the daughter of a baker. I've done some economics classes, and facial hair isn't allowed in hotel or resort kitchen areas. And fourthly, that scenario is just how most Law and Order or CSI or Criminal Minds stuff starts. So, to cut to a while later, I'm hanging at the bus stop and the bus arrives, and guess who doesn't? The dude. I don't know what happened to him, and I really don't know why he followed me for hours like that, and tried so hard to get me to go with him, but I really hope that I don't see him again. I've been living with my fiancé in his childhood home for about 7 years now, and have never experienced anything even remotely paranormal during this time. He has been here for almost 30 years and has also never experienced anything either, so this sudden occurrence of paranormal activity is even more off-putting, simply because it seemingly is the first evidence in the house for at least 60 years plus, since it's been in his family. Anyway, this took place on Thursday morning, right before 3 a.m. when we were watching a movie in the bedroom. We have 2 dogs in the house, a red-nosed pit bull who is male and a boxer pit bull mix who is female, just in case anyone was wondering. And before we heard anything, both of our dogs' heckles went up, and Rick, the pit bull, started making a really low or whining growl noise, which that alone was enough to get me pretty spooked. Needless to say, we were both concerned and immediately paused the movie to see if we could hear anything or something, or try to discern what had our pups so agitated. But we didn't hear anything. So my fiancé gets up to go and check out the rest of the house, and as he approached the door to the bedroom, both dogs jumped up and started barking at the door, heckles still raised, and just behaving in a way that we had honestly never seen before. Now we're both pretty freaked out, and my fiancé retrieves his gun from the nightstand and starts to leave the bedroom, telling me to stay with the dogs and not to come out until he says so. But as soon as he opens the bedroom door, we hear a loud bang coming from the kitchen. Now, the layout of this house is that the bedroom is literally almost right off the dining room, which is connected to the kitchen through an open archway, slightly bigger than a normal-sized doorway, not even 15 feet from where the bedroom door is. So the kitchen is just merely steps away once he left the bedroom. So he rushes out the door and goes to investigate the banging, and I hear him stop dead in his tracks, just short of the kitchen, and he says, "What the hell? Emily?" And I heard the genuine fear in his voice, which I am honestly not used to at all, and started to panic, getting myself out of bed and running after him. The dogs now were both on the floor barking after me, but refusing to leave the room. When I leave the bedroom, the banging sound is much clearer now, and I realize that it's the sound of several cupboards in the kitchen, all opening and slamming shut repeatedly, and I know this house well enough to know the distinct sound the cupboards make when opened or closed, so I was certain that that was it. I just see my fiancé standing in the dining room staring into the kitchen with absolutely no colour in his face, with his mouth just hanging open, and as I reach him and look into the kitchen, I actually saw all of the cupboards above the sink, 4 of them to be precise, 2 larger ones on each side and 2 smaller ones in the middle, slammed shut on their own, before it all just stopped as quickly as it started. We both were pretty much stuck there in just complete shock, trying to piece together what the hell just happened, because I can't begin to think of any logical explanation for it, and neither can he. I mean, we're the only 2 people in this house, and we were both in another room when the slamming started, and my fiancé is still a good 7 feet away from the closet or the cupboard when I saw all 4 simultaneously slam shut. So there was absolutely no human interference with the cupboards in any way. After the slamming stopped, our dogs ran out of the bedroom finally and stood behind my fiancé, just barking and whining, still acting weird, but they at least left the bedroom, and they would not go into the kitchen. They didn't for the rest of the night, in fact, even after everything had finally stopped. And the final incident that happened was while we were both just standing there staring into the kitchen. Our little clock radio that we have on the counter turned on by itself on full volume. Mind you, we never have the volume that high, and there are never any alarms set on it or anything like that. It has no remote activation of any kind as well. I mean, it's just a clock radio from the 90s. Anyway, so that's my experience, everyone, and I apologize for my poor storytelling or any other issues with me telling this, but I just had to get this off my chest because it's been really bothering me, and I have no idea what to do about this, if there even is anything to be done about it. I've never really dealt with anything like this besides loving horror movies and ghost stories, I suppose. I just never thought that I'd have one of my own, and now that I do, I kind of wish that I didn't. Thank you also to anyone who's listening to this, and if anyone has any advice, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. This happened about 14 years ago. My boyfriend and I went to a graveyard one night because he had told me a story about how he had seen something there. He didn't really want to take me, but I insisted. He said that he had heard stories about the place, and if you go there and sit every night, you'd eventually see it. He said that he'd finally seen the thing himself on the third or the fourth consecutive night that he visited, and it was like a man-like thing and grey, but he only caught a glimpse of it and never went back afterward. I remember him saying that he had car trouble when it appeared also, and well, I just couldn't resist. I wanted to see it for myself. And it was on the third night that we saw it. We were sitting in the dark with the moon being the only source of light. Man, we were dumb. And we both suddenly got creeped out for the first time since we had been visiting the place. We changed our minds about the whole thing, and we decided to leave and just never come back, but lo and behold, the car, my car that has never had any trouble before, and not again for years after this incident, wouldn't start. My boyfriend was driving that night and kept trying, and it did eventually start up. When the headlight came on full force, we saw it, standing right in front of the car. It was about 7 feet tall, and it was completely grey. In fact, it looked like a moving statue to me, kind of. It was kind of bent over, just looking into the windshield at us, and we freaked the hell out. It kind of shifted, and the car finally started. The thing darted off to the left so quickly that I knew that if it came to the side the windows were both on, that we would both be dead within a minute. It was so fast that it's hard to explain, but it just stood to the side of the car watching us as we drove away. The cemetery was laid out where the gravel road, old country, cemetery kind of road, went around the whole graveyard in a circle and looped back around, so the entrance is also the exit. We were honestly spinning tires and slinging gravel the whole way around, but when we passed the place where the thing was, it hadn't moved. It had been standing there just watching us go around the gravel circle, and it apparently just let us leave, but it was looking directly at me, the passenger side of the car that was facing it. And at this stage, I couldn't really make out any features because it was so dark, but I was overcome with the most severe depression that I've ever felt in my life in that moment when I was looking back at that thing. It was like everyone and just everything that I cared about in my whole life was burnt right before my eyes. The pain and the hurt was almost tangible, and it took my breath away in that moment. That night, when I was home and finally able to somehow sleep, I had a dream that this thing was calling me from that graveyard, begging me to come back. That it was harmless and miserable, stuck in that old cemetery forever, and it was alone, so alone. When I woke up, I was determined to go back to find the creature, but before I could even tell my boyfriend, I got calls from him and 2 of my best friends. And all 3 of them had had nightmares where this thing had brutally murdered and mutilated me. The 2 girls who called me didn't know anything about the graveyard incident the night before. It was so late when I got back home that I didn't tell anyone about it. Just went to bed, and my boyfriend dreamt that I had gone back to the place because I felt bad for it, so he drove out there after me. When he got there, he found the thing ripping me apart apparently and tearing me open. For a long time, I had dreams about it too, saying that I won't hurt you, please come back and help me, I'm suffering. And for a while, I had to fight the urge to go back, even after people told me about their nightmares where I would die. I guess it faded with time and kids and adulting, but I do think about it often, and I do kind of still get a bit of an itch just to drive through, and I don't know. It would be dumb as hell, I know, but there's always been a little nagging voice that whispers about the thing that we saw that night. It had a masculine physique, but no genitalia, and its eyes were completely black, so no iris or pupil or anything. Just black, inky nothingness. I've been searching all these years, but the only pics that I've seen that look even remotely like it are kind of like Wendigos, but not the ones with like fur or antlers, just a greyish humanoid sexless thing. The best way that I could describe it actually is that it actually looked like a statue to me. Does anyone have any ideas of what this might be? It's bugged me for damn near 2 decades now, and any suggestions would be appreciated.